What's up, y'all, and welcome to Watchworthy. It's your co-host, Brother Ash.
And I'm Miss Chris D.
And on today's episode of Watchworthy, we're going to be covering the 2024 Netflix docuseries, Mr. McMahon. So, Mr. McMahon is a classic figure of everybody's childhood, especially millennial boys, because we grew up watching wrestling, WWE, all that stuff. And yeah, I always just see him as like the bad guy that had the...
I honestly knew his face, but I did not know his name.
He just walked around like this all day, like a dickhead. So
it's crazy. I didn't even watch wrestling, but I knew who he was.
So yeah, the series is like 7 episodes. The series is they got like a bunch of people on there from Vince McMahon, his family, different associates, different WWE stars, different reporters that would try to call him out on his different allegations. The Rock, John Cena, Hulk Hogan, and plenty more. So definitely check it out. It's dope to see some of those guys talking about their careers on this level. And it was breaking news in June 2022 that there was actually a WWE sex scandal, and it halted production of the documentary. So then in 2024, Vince McMahon resigned as the WWE CEO after the allegations of sexual misconduct. And y'all will hear like this ain't the first one that he's getting. It was for sexual misconduct, assault, and trafficking.
They said everything in the book. We gonna give it to you.
That trafficking word is very, 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 very hot this year in 2024. So most of Vince McMahon's interviews in this series were filmed before the allegations, or the most recent allegations. So
they recorded this in like 2021. So I saw when the docuseries was coming out, I was like, oh babe, we should watch this. And then I saw articles that was like, he's trying to pull back, he doesn't want them to release it. I see why.
Yeah, bro definitely got like some lip fillers too, because
he looked crazy.
He looked weird as hell. Like I'm like, why does an old man
They show one like video where he tried to dye his hair and his mustache, and he literally looked like the evil guy from like I can't remember the name of the show, but he just looked evil. He looked like an evil villain character.
It's the way he walked, bro. Like I can't take him seriously. Like
oh my god. So let's just start out with a little bit about pro wrestling to kick us off, because like I said, I did not really watch WWE, and
I wasn't like one of those dudes or kids
watched every Monday night.
Nah.
But I definitely knew of it. Like, it was hard to escape in the 2000s. We're millennials. We grew up in, like, the early 2000s. So there was an older wrestler in the docuseries. His name was Anthony White. He was one of the only black ones, too. You'll see we're a handful of people of color, but I would say it is kind of diverse, We'll learn that Vince, he didn't care who you were. He just wanted you to perform. So he was a guy, Anthony White. He was a WWE Hall of Famer. And he said in the docuseries that pro wrestling is turning fantasy into reality. And I think once I understood that pro wrestling is just like characters, storylines, it's like a soap opera. Once I connected those dots, I realized, okay, they're really acting in there. Because I used to be like, wow, they're really hitting each other over the head with a metal chair. Like,
you could kind of see, like, they be hitting each other and shit, but that's not how people really fight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's not real wrestling. So, like, it was real to the physical, they basically just like live stuntmen and women.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exciting. And they talked about in this docuseries how, like, America loves that. America likes a good guy, a bad guy, and y'all get into the ring and wrestle it out. And so a little bit about Vince McMahon. He's a third-generation wrestling promoter and announcer. His dad was the founder of the World Wrestling Federation, and he was considered one of the best in the business. This was like the 1970s, so it was still kind of early aughts. We just recently watched that movie, Iron Claw with Zac Efron.
Yeah.
That showed like that 1970s pro wrestling. It was very interesting. And so his dad would like frequently sell out Madison Square Garden. They had a very big take of the market. And Vince, he actually did not meet his dad until he was age 12. So red flag already. He has a very troubling past, a very sad background and very bad family dynamic where he lived in a trailer park with his mom and abusive stepdad for, those 12 years of his life. They didn't really say like how he met his dad, but one day he did just get to meet him and he took off from there. But he said that they never really had that conversation about why his dad wasn't around his childhood, and they only had business in common. So that was definitely a red flag for me.
Yeah, that's red flag.
Like, you early on are already trying to win your dad's approval over through this business. So it really wasn't a good look from the beginning. So his dad gave him his first chance to be an announcer. And they say that Vince was actually horrible. It's crazy that you say, like, we all know him for this Mr. McMahon character. But back in the beginning, they say he was a very bad, announcer. But it didn't take him long before he realized, like, okay, this is just storytelling.
Yeah.
And I can relate to that a little bit because people are like, oh, you're so confident on the mic. I'm like, it's just telling a story. Like, give people what they want. Vince learned that early on. Like, you got to be able to give people what they want. So not too later, okay, his dad is like this big wrestling tycoon. He's getting older. He's like, I'm going to sell the business. But he didn't even think of his son first. Red flag. That just goes to show their dynamic. He thought to give it to Gorilla Monsoon. He was like, I'm not interested in my son. But eventually Vince did buy the business, the World Wrestling Federation, WWF. It was first known before WWE. And they really clashed, like, on their ideas because this was the good old boys club. This was the 1970s. We gonna just have two men fight in the ring, a good guy versus bad guy.
Yeah.
But this is when Vince, like, he's younger. I guess you would consider him, like, is he Gen X? No, he's like a boomer. I don't know. But he was like, no, I'm the young guy. I want to give some new ideas. And his dad was like, no, we're going to keep the business how it is. And so eventually, he was able to get pro wrestling to take off the ground, really, because it was kind of like underground. It was just like the people who know about it, and we love our community.
Word.
And they had like their different regions. Well, Vince was like, no, let's shake things up. Why do we need to have regions?
Vince was that young, new executive that didn't care for the rules of the old world, didn't care for none of that shit. He was strictly there to try to capitalize and make as much money as he could from his entertainers.
Absolutely.
That's all he cared about.
Absolutely. All he cared about was green.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, people had their handshake deals and their agreements in this kind of, pro wrestling industry. But he was like, nah, F that. I'm going to go across borders. I'm going to take my shows from Memphis to Florida. People were not doing that back then. And so that really ruffled some feathers. He started making more money that way, and that started bringing new talent. Of course, people were like, oh, I want to go to the WWF because they doing hot new things. So that's how he started to get new people like Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan was definitely prominent in the docuseries. He was interviewed back in 2021, 2022. So he was definitely in there. And that's when they started to get Andre the Giant, Hulk Hogan. They're doing well at the time. And Hulk Hogan actually took that Rocky III opportunity. And that's when people realized, oh, pro wrestlers aren't just like these little amateurs. Like, they could be actors. They could be entertainers.
Yeah.
And I feel like they really harped on the fact that Vince was one of the first people to see that. Like,
Hulk
he
Hogan
already
was
had
that boy.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that he was able to start his own Hulkamania, like, I knew of him and I didn't even grow up in the 70s, like he continued to be another icon in the WWF for many decades. And so his star really took off from there. Now, at this time, it's the late 70s, early 80s. Iran is front page news this decade. And there's a lot of nationalism in this era. And so Vince, he said in the docuseries, like, he really didn't make trends. He just followed trends. If that's what people are talking about, that's what we're going to give them. He literally said that. And so they came up with this character, put a red flag for the Iron Sheik. I understand it's the late 70s, early 80s. We can do whatever we want. But today we know this is not politically correct to be making fun of Iranian people. But, he said, like, of course, Americans, they're not going to, like, boo an Iranian person on the street. So they come to our show so they can just, like, freely talk at them and, like, boo them and do whatever they want. So I understand for the time.
It gave people, like, this was, like, WrestleMania, not WrestleMania yet, but like pro wrestling, especially Vince McMahon's pro wrestling, it really gave you that kind of like gladiator kind of entertainment. And it was just like, you could, like, they always had a bad guy, always had a good guy. And the Iran Sheik, man, they used to do foul shit towards that guy.
That's what I'm saying. Like, when y'all watch this, you're going to be like, damn, they really got away with. I can't believe what they got away with. Even up to the 2000s, honestly. Like, we was living in some crazy dark times. But nevertheless, in this era, the Vince and Hulk duo is really helping the WWF expand. I would even say that Hulk Hogan, like, made WWF for real. Like, he really, in the early years, really helped build them. And so Vince's strength was luring that top talent. So once people start seeing that they're, shooting off, they're like, we want to get on board. And he really got that from his dad, they said. So I guess it does run blood deep. Like, we have our parents' best and worst traits. And I feel like Vince definitely embodied that. And they said that his dad still would not give him a pat on the back, nothing. He, like, it's sad, red flag when people are like, my dad told me he was proud of me one time when I was 5 years old, back in the, like, they can distinctly remember that one day. Vince had a moment like that. He was like, yeah, my dad did not really say he was proud of me until I got famous from WWF. Like, then he was finally proud of me. I'm like, damn, that sucks. And so the only time that his dad even said that he loved him was the day before he died at age 69.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's really sad.
Red flag.
Red flag for that.
People really out here not telling their kids that they love them is crazy.
And maybe that is what,
that's why he's so fucked up.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, maybe that's why he turned into the person that he is today, because he didn't get enough love. He was abused as a child, all these things. But now with his dad out of the way, he was like, yes, I'm in charge. So he's been in charge of this business for like 40 years.
Yeah, he's not letting go.
No. And so Vince was hosting shows on TNT, getting advertising on USA. Pro wrestling had never seen this kind of coverage before at all. And he was even having wrestlers on David Letterman, MTV, you know, things were really taking off. And also, let's not forget the ladies of the WWE. I feel like they do get lost. Today in 2024, I feel like they're really having a rise. But let's talk about Wendy Richter. She was one of their like WWE early divas. I'm talking like early 80s. Like, she was one of the only women in the ring. And she even like joined forces with Cyndi Lauper, and they had a whole moment. So
yeah,
Vince really
this is like the third Cyndi Lauper appearance.
Right, Cyndi Lauper has been in a couple documentaries.
Like,
you cannot talk about the 80s without Cyndi Lauper, and I think Vince knew that as well. He really drew from pop culture, like I said, so he made sure to get the celebrities in there. Whatever, I'm telling you, this man would do whatever it took to get people to buy tickets and watch. Like, it's really sad how low he would go. But nevertheless, Cyndi Lauper was in there. Hulk Hogan brings in Mr. T, who was really big at the time.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
I didn't know they had a whole, like...
Me neither. Yeah. And the term you're going to hear us keep saying over and over in this docuseries is like the storyline. Because as we said, these wrestlers, they are characters. So they have a whole plot. They have a whole script to follow. And they have these storylines. So like Mr. T had a storyline. Cyndi Lauper had like a revenge, not revenge, but when she was hating on one of the wrestlers, and so they had a little tiff, and they had to work it out in the ring. I'm like, Cyndi Lauper cannot wrestle, but that's how you know that it had to be like a little fake, because she ain't punching nobody. But it was still entertaining. Again, people pointed out in the docuseries, like, oh, people call fans of wrestling, like, you know, dumb, but we're not dumb. We actually are wise to the fact, we're hip to the fact that it's not real, but we still enjoy good entertainment. So that's when Vince was like, hey, if they have a Super Bowl, if they have a World Series, why not a WrestleMania? Why not, you know, bring together the biggest stars for the biggest night in wrestling?
WrestleMania.
Yeah. So that's kind of when the press, you know, they gonna do their job. They like, hey, we don't think this is actually real. Like, how real is it? Let's start exposing it. Like, that's the real story when we want to get to the root of. And so they show some videos of like how wrestlers were not here for it. Pro wrestlers are like 10 toes down, like, no, this is our story and we're sticking to it. Like, wrestling is real. And they would like slap any journalist who say otherwise.
Literally, like
they literally showed a video where a wrestler slapped the journalist.
Apparently, Vince would like hype them up. Like, man, I really wish somebody would just slap the shit out of that guy.
And that goes to show how a little bit evil he could be. Like, he wouldn't command his performers or his wrestlers to do his dirty work, but like he would drop little hints like that and people would do it because, like we said, he was kind of the creme de la creme. Like, there's nothing higher than WWF right now. So he's really on top and he's feeling himself. And so, you know, meanwhile, they're really trying to build interest in WrestleMania because still, like we said, the media is not really seeing this as like a professional sport. They're not seeing you like the NFL. So they're still trying to build, you know, interest in this WrestleMania. They talked about how Vince did do that out of pocket. Him and his wife put everything on the line. That really shows he was a risk taker as a promoter.
Oh, hell yeah. Yes. If nothing else, he
really did what he had to do. So finally, WrestleMania 1 happens, and it is a major success. The company really skyrocketed. Like, the first one, nothing's ever going to be as great as, like, the first Super Bowl or, like, the first WrestleMania, you know? But then that's when they started to get on more, like, network television. They had the NBC with, like, the Monday night, and they really had their first shot at network TV. But, of course, with more success comes more scrutiny. So, red flag for the wrestlers being exploited. We should have known in a business like this, like, they're going to work you like a dog. But I did not know that they had to work 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year, did not get to see their family, no days off, and it's the late 80s, so it was really just a disaster. Like,
It's
no,
crazy,
you're going
man.
to work till you die for us.
Yeah.
And so that reminds me of another docuseries you got to check out, babe, about the All-American whatever ninja whatever thing.
American Ninja Warrior, yeah.
And they showed about how bad they were treated too.
Wow.
And so speaking of that, today they have like these guaranteed contracts like professional sports athletes, because you cannot be working somebody. It's a physical, even though we said that it's quote fake, they're just stuntmen, it's still very physical.
Very.
When they throw themselves on the ground, they're still throwing themselves on the ground.
And even just maintaining your physique. They said, well, it was, a bunch of stuff with that, but those guys got to work out, they got to train year round. Like, it's not as, fake and glamorous as you might think.
So Jesse, the body, Ventura, he was the one back in the 80s who was like, I want to start a union. This isn't right. They not treating us fair. But Hulk Hogan ratted him out, y'all.
Yeah.
Everybody had just such an allegiance to Vince. Hulk was like, oh, I'm not going to let him bring Vince down like that. Like, it's either you or Vince, and it's always you. So that didn't happen. They really didn't get that unionization. But WrestleMania 2 happened, and that's when Vince kind of bit off more than he could chew. He was like, oh, I'm going to do 3 shows in one night. It's going to be epic. Like, we're going to be better than last year. And it did do well, but not as big of a spectacle as WrestleMania 1.
Yeah.
So they fast forward to WrestleMania 3, and that's when they wanted to have Hulk versus Andre the Giant. And they talked about how Andre the Giant was not physically capable to put on a WrestleMania 3.
Bruh.
But of course, Vince would he would not take no for an answer. So he actually ended up paying for Andre the Giant surgery to get him physically capable to do WrestleMania 3.
Red flag.
Yeah.
And the red flag was because there was shit going on in his back, and Hulk Hogan literally slammed the shit out of this dude.
Yeah.
Like,
so
on his back, like.
And I think that's why we know, like, Vince will do anything. Examples like this, where you didn't care about somebody's physical health, you just cared about money. And the whole goal for that WrestleMania 3 was to fill a stadium of 93,000 people. And they did do that. And that is a great feat. But at what cost? You're putting these two people's physicality on the line. And so ultimately, Hulk Hogan won that match. And it really made him a household name, they said after that. I'm telling you, I didn't ever watch a day of wrestling in my life, but I knew who Hulk Hogan was.
Yeah, I had the fucking toy.
Really?
Yeah.
So Vince started to feel like, damn, I'm not getting a lot of credit as like the creator of this. Hulk Hogan's really the face, and like he's getting all the credit. And I feel that, but at the same time, like, you have to think about, what is your purpose? Are you doing this so everybody knows you, or so everybody knows the WWF? Yeah. And we see his answer. He wanted to be known.
He wanted to be as famous as the people he was making famous.
Yeah.
For all the wrong reasons, too. I don't even fuck what nobody says.
Yeah. They said that he was really a workaholic, and Vince McMahon even tried to get into filmmaking. He made a movie with Hulk. It didn't really work that well.
That scene that they showed us was so stupid.
That movie was bad.
Like, they had the Hulk talking like this. And, what are you doing? And like, it's just the whole, like, all of the antics behind wrestling was just so extra.
It was like the soap opera. It really was like so over exaggerated. You had to know it was fake, but like you still enjoyed it, I guess that's kind of like our Marvel today or whatever. But by 1985, Vince planned for Wendy Richter to lose her title. So this is where you start to notice, like, he really is evil, like, because these people, even though, like we said, pro wrestling is all act, yada, yada, these people took their championship belt seriously. They were like, hey, I did this shit. I worked for this. Like, I got this title. He's like, nah, you're out. New girl's in, and I want your belt. And she was like, no, I'm not feeling that. So that really goes to show, like, it was never personal for Vince. It was all business. He was like, I do not care. Like, so they did her dirty. They did a couple other people dirty like that, where they would just be like, nope, we're going to write a new script, and so-and-so is going to win over you. And so when you see these people who are like, oh, I've had the WWE championship for 16 years, that's because Vince wanted them to. If he wanted somebody else to have it, they would have it. So it really was his show. He was really planning everything. They called him like the creative director of it all. And so by 1990, WrestleMania 6, Hulk Hogan's star is starting to fade a little bit. It's 1990. He's been out for like 15 years,